So it is time for some exercises related to ANOVA and LSD, which is least significant difference, a post-hoc test of ANOVA, right? So example number 1 is levels of bicarbonates were measured from ponds treated with different liming doses, right? And the unit of measurement is milligrams per deciliter. And you have to find out if there is a significant difference in the mean level of bicarbonates between different ponds. Or in other words, you can say that you have to find out if there is any effect of different liming doses on the levels of bicarbonates in ponds. And here is the descriptive statistics for this example, and the number of observations taken from each pond are 30. So the total number of observations are 90. And the mean value for pond number 1 is 39.6667 milligrams per deciliter. The mean level of bicarbonates from pond number 2 are 46 milligrams per deciliter. And the mean levels of bicarbonates from pond number 3 are 49.6667 milligrams per deciliter, right? And then we have the total values as well. So variances are also given, and the summation x values, summation x whole square, and the summation x square values are given. So you can see that apparently their mean values are different from each other, so you have to figure out that whether this difference is significant or no. And these are the table values for the different tests that we are going to use for this purpose. The Fmax values, the F table values, and the T values. Our example number 2 is also the same, that levels of bicarbonates in milligrams per deciliter were measured from ponds treated with different liming doses. Find out if there is a significant difference in the mean level of bicarbonates between different ponds. Or in other words, we can say that you have to find out if there is any effect of different liming doses on the levels of bicarbonates in ponds. And you have the descriptive statistics here. Here also the total number of observations are 90, but the difference is that in this case the number of samples are 5. In the previous example, the number of samples were 3, and the number of observations in each of the samples was 30. But in this case, we have taken different observations from each of the ponds, and these ponds are 5. So here we have 5 different liming doses that need to be compared. And the mean value taken from pond number 1 is 35.61 milligrams per deciliter of bicarbonates. From pond number 2, this is 43.9 milligrams per deciliter of bicarbonates. From pond number 3, which has 23 observations, and the mean of these observations is 43.57 milligrams per deciliter of bicarbonates. And from pond number 1, we took only 12 observations, and the mean bicarbonate levels are 45.75 milligrams per deciliter from this pond. And then pond number 5, the mean levels of bicarbonates are 57.06 milligrams per deciliter, and the number of observations taken are 16. So these are the mean values, which are taken from 5 different ponds, which means 5 different liming doses. And you have to find out that if there is any difference in the levels of bicarbonates due to different liming doses in the ponds, and you have to interpret, or you have to explain if there is any effect of different liming doses on the bicarbonate levels of ponds. So remember one thing, that the source of water for all of these ponds in both of these examples was same, right? So the source of water was same. The difference is the levels of bicarbonates. So you have to figure out that if there is any effect of the liming doses or no. And you have to figure out that what are these treatments. So while describing your results, first of all, you have to define the treatments and response in this, that what is meant by treatments in this specific example and what is meant by response, right? And you have to define the independent or the predictor variable or variables, the number of independent variables that you have in this exercise, and the categories of the independent variables, And you have to also define the dependent or the measurement variable or variables, the number of dependent or measurement variables that you have in this example. And you also have to define the type of ANOVA which is applicable in this case, right? So you have to define these things. And you have to state the hypothesis of ANOVA. You have to state the null hypothesis of ANOVA, the alternate hypothesis of ANOVA. You have to apply the Fmax test, and you have to state hypotheses for Fmax test, that while you're applying the Fmax test, you have to do the calculation and you have to state the results of Fmax. And the critical values of Fmax required for each of the exercises is given with their respective tables. Then you have to perform the ANOVA calculation. You have to make the ANOVA summary table after calculations, and you have to give your result statement, right? So you have to perform ANOVA, and you have to make your result statement for ANOVA, and then you have to perform ANOVA post hoc test if applicable, right? And in the post hoc test, you have to perform the post hoc test of Fisher's least significant difference, and you have to state the results of LSD. And then in the end, you have to make your concluding remarks. You have to interpret or explain your results. That what do you think about the problem that was given or the experiment that was done, and how do you conclude that what is the result of that experiment? What do you get from the results of this experiment? So you have to elaborate this a little bit, that what are your concluding remarks, how you can conclude or how you can interpret the results that you have obtained after the experiment, after the ANOVA analysis, and after the post hoc ANOVA analysis, right? So you have to make these concluding remarks as well for each of these two exercises. All right, so you have to do this exercise on your own, and then you have to submit the solved exercises before the question answer session, and then we are going to discuss these exercises in our question answer session, their solution, and we are going to discuss that what did you find, what is your conclusion about these problems, and what do you suggest, right? So you have to submit the solved exercises before the question answer session, and we are going to discuss these examples in the question answer session scheduled for this lecture, right? So you have to do this homework and come up with the solved exercises at the time of your question answer session.